Hey CFNE, it's Coach Heather here again. I do not wear glasses, but I do wear blue light filtering glasses at night if I am going to be having some light on or if I'm using my screen for some reason. I try to do that as religiously as I can, just to make sure that I'm not, as we've talked before, I'm not delaying the release of melatonin at night. Which would make it hard for me to fall asleep and would cause a string of other things to happen. But tonight what I actually want to talk to you guys about is the idea of how sleep affects our immune system, which I think is a really important topic right now given the state of the world. And beyond that, even without us being in quarantine right now, the idea that getting an inefficient night of sleep is going to significantly put us into a higher risk category of developing various forms of cancer, including cancer of the bowel, the prostate, breast cancer, and then on top of that, lots of other viral sorts of diseases. So the way that what happens basically is when we get 4 or 5 hours of sleep at night versus a full night of sleep, which would be considered somewhere more like around 8 hours, we significantly drop the activity of something called natural killer cells in our body. So natural killer cells are basically, I like to think of them as like the CIA in our body. They're these cells that their job is to go around our body and our system and basically attack, like detect and attack any cell or anything that is dangerous or abnormal in our bodies. So for example, we naturally have all of these cancer cells in our body every day. And what happens is these natural killer cells will go around and they'll find these cells in our bodies and they attach to them. And where they do that, they inject this toxic or this toxin into them and kills them one at a time. So they'll kill that cell, then they'll move on to the next one. They'll hunt down anything else that kind of seems like it's not safe. Basically, it'll latch onto that, it'll inject its like venom into it, and then it'll move on and it'll kill it off. And that happens within 24 hours of these cells, often these cancer cells that are in our bodies. So it also applies to things like viral cells and stuff like that. So just another reason to get a good night of sleep, because that actually the more interesting fact with that is that when we get the 4 to 5 hours of sleep versus something like an 8-hour night of sleep, the activity of those natural killer cells, or the CIA, like I called them before, drops by 72%. So that is a very significant drop in our percentage in terms of how healthy our immune system is, and how able we are to fight off and ward off disease. Another quick interesting thing about that, kind of related to that subject, is that we have these vaccines, right? And vaccines, we know that we go and we get these very low dosages of whatever it is we're getting a vaccine for. So if say it's the flu, for example, the flu vaccine, we'll go and we'll get a shot, and it's basically giving us like a certain amount of it so that our body will have this antibody response to it. When we go in to get our vaccines, if we've had a week leading up to that of not good sleep versus a week of having good sleep, and there's been studies showing this, comparing the two groups, we lower our antibody response by 50%. So something that's interesting about that is, so that would affect, obviously, flu vaccines and stuff, but when we do, and we will ultimately come up with a vaccine for COVID-19, it's something to consider in terms of when you are able to get your vaccination for that. It's something to really consider, making sure that you get a full, really good week of sleep leading up to that vaccination, because it could mean that you will be 50% less likely to be immune from it. So something to think about and talk about and read more about. Okay, that's all I got for you guys. Have a great night of sleep, and I will see you next time.